So now, the way to understand this reality is again explained. It's not only na iti, that's the methodology used, but along with what it is not, what it is, both also has to be said. Yeah? And now, what happens is, while you are listening to the whole teaching, so what here it says, na sandrishe tishtati rupam asya, na chakshusha pashyati kaschan enam, hrida hridistham manasa ya enam evam viduhu amrutaha te bhavanti. Okay, so that means now, what is the, while the teaching is going on and the methodologies are used, then our normal orientation, because everything that we have known is always through perception or perception-based inference. Now here, Atma by definition is not available for perception because it will become an object. Then the question is, who is the subject which will objectify this Atma? So therefore, we have to actually give up our orientation that it is, or wanting to objectify it. Wanting to objectify it means what? Wanting also to experience it as an object, right? So this is the whole catch. People want to experience Atma. Experience by definition means there is an experiencer who experiences a given thing. So you are still working in duality. Atma is the only thing you don't have to experience as an experiencer. In fact, it has always been there behind all your experiences. No experience could have taken place without the presence of Atma. This is what one needs to understand. So this is why the method of understanding here is what we say. Every time you use pramana, what generally, for every understanding, what a corresponding thought takes place. So that means, if you have to understand this specs, something as simple as the specs, this physical specs doesn't enter your inside you. What is happening is your eyes capture the form and the signals are sent in your mind, and the mind creates what we call a vritti. Vritti is a thought, and that thought, when it is in keeping with what is, that is what we call knowledge. When the thought is not exactly in keeping with what it is, we call it either partial knowledge, or we can also call it an error if it is completely opposed to what it is. So that means it really depends. The object is what it is. You only can call it knowledge when a corresponding vritti, which is a thought, has taken place in your mind, which is in keeping with what is. What is, that you want to know, right? So that means when you are listening to Upanishad, so first of all, Atma cannot be known as an object because what? It is everything. So that means only one thought can never be enough, because by the time I explain what is everything, that includes what? Objects, it includes what? The cause of the object, it includes time, space, it includes the, so that means that itself takes what? You are just, what are you doing? You are gaining knowledge. So what are you doing is, you are gaining knowledge of a dot, then another dot, then another dot. Then what you have to do, make sure that your understanding of that dot is exact. You can't create your own story in that. Oh, I want to be loving, so let me give attribute of loving to Atma. Because what will happen is, if you make Atma loving, whereas everybody has what? Some amount of irritation, hatred, where will that come from? You'll have to give another cause. The minute you give another cause, you create another entity called Saturn. So that means it's not you make your own story. You have to use pramana to make your own story, to understand what is the nature of Atma. This is what we mean by Vastu Tantra. So that means every dot has to be understood exactly as it is. Neither any addition nor any subtraction. Now, but that alone is also not sufficient. Why? Because you also, each one is connected to the other. So that means not only you have to know the dots accurately, you have to connect all the dots accurately. You can't make wrong connections. Then also you make an error. So by the time the whole process, so till that means when you're listening to Vedanta, there is a whole big process of learning. So that process of learning is something that you have to follow. And the difficulty is we have so many different opinions about everything, about ourselves, about the world, about the cause of the universe. So that means we already are operating from an already written picture, which is not accurate. So you have to erase that and you have to re-understand totally the new picture. You can't continue to operate from your existing picture and then plug in a few things. Then plugging in few things, it will not lead to correction. Now, the added difficulty is our emotions. It's not only we have understood everything not accurately, we, as a result of wrong understanding, we have emotions which are all haywire. So that means that also we have to deal with. So that means by the time you undo all of that, it takes time. Nobody can claim that I can just learn like that. That shows non-understanding of the enormity of the subject matter. That's why one has to have right relationship with knowledge. One can't approach this knowledge with arrogance. Not possible. So that means once you understand the enormity of knowledge, then you become humble and you really begin to patiently remove your ignorance of this. You remake connections. Sometimes if you don't understand one thing totally accurately, with your partial understanding, you make different connection with Ishvara. So that means your present understanding of that one is not enough and you have made a wrong connection. So that means now when you understand little better, what do you need to do? Not only you have to understand this part better, you have to reconnect it to the other part. So this is how it keeps going. Then there is what we call the last thought. The last thought, which is what we call Akhandakara Vritti. What happens in Akhandakara Vritti? That means that there is one thought as a result of the whole process of knowing. Please don't think that you come to Shastra and the thought takes and then you are enlightened. This is funny. It doesn't happen like that. So therefore, as a result of understanding everything, then you come closer and closer by this process of refining understanding of one thing and reconnecting. Every time the understanding is refined. Every time you have to do that exercise. When that happens sufficiently, the last thought is that it's like putting the last piece of jigsaw puzzle. The last piece of jigsaw puzzle. If that was the only piece, will it be a solution? No. So many other pieces are put together first, but after putting so many pieces together, still the knowledge is not complete. When the last piece is put together, then what? Complete. The vision is complete. That last piece of putting together is what we call Akhandakara Vritti. What does this Vritti do? This Vritti totally removes ignorance about your nature. And that means also in your nature is included what? Ishvara, also the universe. Because you don't understand yourself as just independent of the body and mind, you understand yourself as Jagat Karanam Brahma. That is a different thing altogether. That means you understand yourself as the very cause of the universe. In which case, you have to first understand what is this cause of the universe? Ishvara. And you have to understand what is universe. You have to understand it all. So therefore, this is what we call a Khandakara vritti. Now, as I told you, Vedanta as every other vritti has two operations. The vritti has two operations. One is it creates the shape. If I want to know the glass, it creates what? The glass vritti. The thought of the glass. Your thought takes the shape of the glass.
Mental representation.
Mental
or
representation.
cognition. You can use all these different words.
Yes. In Sanskrit it is called vritti jnana. So now, when that takes place, the ignorance, if I ask, ignorance also goes away at the same time. So two operations are done. Ignorance goes and the thought assumes what? The shape of this glass. Now, in the case of Atma, which is limitless, can it take one shape?
It is formless.
Exactly. Atma is understood to be formless, so it can't take a shape. The vritti cannot, if it is taking one shape, it is understanding it as an object. So therefore, without taking a shape, what has to happen? Because what is the nature of the vastu? The vastu is formless. So that means you have to understand it as such, but at the same time what the ignorance goes away. So unlike every knowledge where there are two operations, what we call vritti vyapti and phala vyapti, in this operation there is only what? Only phala vyapti. Only. Because there is no corresponding form. So this is how the most important part, that everybody is busy doing something else and everybody is looking here because this is more important.
That is phala prapti.
This is how our mind is. It has its own priorities. So this is how it is. Now I'm not going to repeat because you chose to pay attention here. So now you listen to the tape. So therefore you had a choice. So this is how the operation is. So now this is what we call a Khandakara vritti, which completes the knowledge of the nature of I. So this is what it says, na chakshusha pashyati. If your orientation remains in, either objectifying it or experiencing it or trying to separate Atma from body, mind, sense complex, that means that very orientation is wrong. It will not get you what you are looking for. Okay? So what happens? Where do you have to see it? Hridda hridistham. Manasa ya enam eva viduhu. Okay? So that means hridistham, it is said again and again that what? In fact here, the translation is really beautiful. The pure intellect. So that means an intellect which is capable of reaching the meanings of that are intended to be created by Upanishads without distorting them. This is what we call pure intellect. By the time they reach you, they don't create the meaning which are not meant to be created. When it reaches you, it has to create exactly the intended meaning. If you shift it even this much, that means there is still a distortion. You are not seeing it exactly as it is. So that means that is what we call pure mind. Then this is why if you want the Upanishad's words to reach you totally accurately, you can't afford to be projecting when you are dealing with small things. So that means in small things I have a difficulty in assessing what is right, what is not right, what is the intention of the other. In all those small things, if I don't get it right, how will I get it right? Tell me. So this is what preparation is. In small, you start with small things and you start to get it right. Then you move a little bit up and you get it right. Then you get it right. So that means you train the mind to get it right. And this particular thing in Bhagavad Gita is talked about in many different ways. One of the ways it is talked about is taking care of your Raga Dvesha. Raga Dvesha is what we call orientations, which are what binding likes and binding dislikes. So you see a given thing and you already project a value on that thing. So your relationship with that object is what based on your projection, not what the object is. Now when you begin to project what you, not really seeing what the thing is, you have a relationship which is not totally what objective. Because if you have projected that I like it, then what happens?
With prejudice, previous experience.
So that means when you have decided that you like it, right, then what happens? That you absolutely want it. And when you can't handle yourself without it. This is because of the message that you have given. Then sometimes it has many different degrees. So if you don't have it, you are feeling high and dry. That is one outcome of Raga Dvesha. The second outcome of Raga Dvesha is the gaining of that object becomes so important for you that if you don't mind sacrificing dharma. That also is a second outcome. The third outcome is, if you have got it, then you somehow managed to get it. There is always a possibility that you lose it, you are always insecure. Raga, Dvesha manifest themselves in so many different ways. And then finally, if you lose it, you can't handle it, you are depressed. So many different manifestations of Raga Dvesha.
And even sometimes, even if you get it, it doesn't give you the satisfaction which you thought
that you thought. Then again you are dissatisfied. So that means Raga Dvesha, because you haven't given the right value. So this is how Raga Dveshas manifest themselves in so many distortions and feelings that we have. So that means when we have, now how people ask, how do I know whether I have these binding Raga Dveshas? So you ask yourself these questions. And this is the way you find out.
Absolutely.
Ask yourself that this person or object or situation or whatever it is, right? What is the value? Is it an accurate value that you are giving to it? Are you giving more or less, whatever, right? Second is the getting of this object or person or situation. Is it so important for you that you are willing to sacrifice dharma? These are the questions you have to ask, because nobody else can tell you whether your likes and dislikes are healthy. Just you can have preferences. People can have preference of. Somebody may prefer pasta, somebody may prefer South Indian food, somebody may prefer North Indian food. Preferences as such are not a problem. The binding likes and dislikes, Raga Dvesha is the binding nature of that. Binding nature means that these distortions start happening. It is a cause for a feeling of that I can't do without it. It is a feeling of willingness to sacrifice dharma. In my not having it, I feel a void. These are what we call binding reasons.
It's actually trying to become, the eye becomes bigger as you capture something and you feel that makes you a greater eye. So the jiva keeps for you, that small eye keeps increasing as you associate with more and more extension of the eye. And that is what people are attempting to.
Yeah. So therefore, this is what one has to then work on. Because that working on is connected to what your ability to understand the final equation. How? Because with small things, if my mind is not supposed to have proper relationship, I either add value or I subtract value, or I am not able to handle it properly, then how will I understand the words of Upanishad, which are very subtle and very intricate, my mind will not be able to reach. Not possible. So this is how that is a preparation. You want to understand Brahman, but where do you start? Dealing with the small little things. Because they are all connected. You may say, yeah, what? You want to understand your limitless? How is this connected? It's connected. Because it is connected to your mind. The mind is the one which solves the final equation. The mind has to be clear. So this is how one prepares oneself till the time that Akhandakara Vritti takes place. Once that last thing is done, the knowledge is complete. Yeah? From there is no. And then, Amrutaha te bhavanti. Once you understand, you cross from what, this is what, I forgot, I had started with Asatoma Sadgamaya, but I left it halfway. So Asatoma, you move from what? The Asat. Asat means giving 100% reality to Mithya and missing the Satyam. That is Asat. From Asat to Sat. You cross. Then how do you cross? Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. How have you crossed from Asat to Sat? By removing your ignorance. Tamas to knowledge. And what is the result of that? Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya. So from mortality you cross to immortality. Operation. Pramana operation. So this is what happens. So then the knowledge is complete. So this is what it says. Now chapter 5. Chapter 5 is interesting. This, our teacher used to say this, which I had a lot of difficulty understanding for a longest time. So it's quite interesting because we are so used to, now I will read first and then I will explain. Dve akshare brahma pare tu anante vidya avidye nihite yatra gode ksharam tu avidya hi amrutam tu vidya vidya vidye ishate yahatu saha anyaha. This is an amazingly beautiful verse. There are so many different aspects to this verse. As I told you, that when you come to this world, you come not knowing any object, and you also come not knowing the nature of the subject. So you come with a clean slate where there is what the clean slate where there is no knowledge. Then you go to school, you go to college and all, you begin to acquire knowledge. So that means now there are two disciplines of knowledge. The two disciplines of knowledge, and that is the knowledge which is which gives you knowledge of any given thing or a subject matter in the world. What is this nature of that knowledge of a given thing in the world? What is it fraught with? It is that first of all, there are two things in it. One is, no matter how much you know it, you can't completely know it. That is how it is. This is why research goes on and on and on and on and on. At no point in time you say that we've understood everything. So that means where there is knowledge, there exactly what some amount of avidya remains. So if I ask you, like yesterday I asked you, that if I hold a rose in my hand and if I ask you what is it, it seems to you that you know it, which is, then you quickly say it is a rose. But if I ask you, why is this rose red? You have no answer. So that means where there is knowledge, that's exactly where there is some part which is still not known. There is ignorance. So this is how, and then the ignorance of the whole still remains. So it is like an elephant is there, you touch that one given part of the elephant, you know that part, but you still don't know the whole of elephant. So that means any given thing in the world will give you what? Partial knowledge of a thing which is never going to be complete. Even that thing is not going to be complete, let alone when you know this, you don't know something else. When you know physics, you don't know chemistry. When you know chemistry, you don't know biology. So this is how it is. It will give you what? Partial knowledge. And even what you want to know, it will still not give you full knowledge. And it will also not give you the knowledge of the whole. This is why this whole knowledge here is described as avidya. The whole knowledge is described as avidya. Different definition of avidya. Generally in our common parlance, when we use the word avidya, we use it in terms of what? Somebody is educated or not educated. Somebody who is illiterate, we say this person doesn't have knowledge. And somebody who is well educated, we say what? This person has vidya. According to this definition, a scientist falls into what? Avidya. Because even a scientist, you ask him about the whole, you ask him what was, this Big Bang, till when, how far they can go back, Surya?
10 power minus 43 seconds.
Exactly. After the
point of
Big Bang.
singularity.
No, just after, not the point of singularity.
So that's what they define as singularity, from which, and they say minus 23, what happened?
Yeah.
The first step.
So before that, they don't know.
Before that they don't know. So that means there is what it means, that definition. By knowing, they don't know fully. They can't explain fully. If you ask them from what is that singularity from which the Big Bang occurred, they said they don't know. So that means it cannot, nothing can be known fully in this world of objects. That is the first thing. The second thing is, by knowing Big Bang, will you know the genetic research? No. So that means, by knowing one thing, you only know one thing, so many things are still not known to you. And let alone the totality of everything. So this is why it is called avidya. But the choice, in fact, please understand, people use it in a very loose manner. These spiritual people use this terminology, oh, everybody is under the spell of avidya. You can't be condescending towards those people, because in that category are scientists. In this category are the biggest painters. In this category are all the people who are highly accomplished. But you just have to understand that in that there is no end. That is what is said. Don't be derogatory towards that. It's a definition. Definition of avidya here is different. It is not illiteracy. That people who are uneducated. So this is what falls within avidya. The other category is vidya. What is this vidya? There's a very nice thing in Chandogya Upanishad. One boy goes to school and gets a lot of knowledge, and he's very arrogant. He's become very arrogant boy, no talk then. So the father sees that this boy is becoming unnecessarily arrogant. So he asks his boy, hey, you went to this, he goes to Veda Pathshala for 12-15 years and he learns, and he's always coming first and all that. They said, did you learn that knowledge by knowing which everything is as well known? The boy first laughed. He said, what are you talking about? How is it possible that by knowing one thing, everything is known? There is no such knowledge. The first reaction he had is, there is no such knowledge. How can there be a knowledge? By knowing physics, you only know physics, you don't know biology. This is how we are used to. Then he thinks and he asks his father. First he makes an affirmative statement, that there cannot, categorical statement, there cannot be such knowledge. Then being a smart person, he changes and he says, is there such knowledge? And the father says, yes. And the father gives an example. Before starting to teach, father gives example. And he says that now imagine there is a clay world. And the clay world has pot, cup, the flower vase. Clay world can have Ganesha. Clay world can have everything. So therefore, when your attention is on forms, how many things appear? Many. And you may know some forms which are existing now, but there are so many clay forms which you don't even know. They are not in front of your eyes, or you don't know them. Then also there were so many clay forms of the past and so many clay forms of in the future. So there is no possibility of knowing each and every one of them. But you can know one thing, and that is clay. By knowing clay, you know what all the forms. Because then you can say, you know the entire clay world, which includes forms which are known to you and unknown to you. Why? Because one pot that you see is it is clay, and then you say, for our language, we say clay plus name and form. Where is plus name and form? You take out the clay. What is this plus? Will the form remain? No. There is no plus. It's a plus without a plus. It's an as though addition. Clay has not added anything by becoming a pot. Nothing is added, but only a name is added for that given form. So therefore, by knowing one clay, you know what entire clay world of what past, present and future, without knowing the specific forms. Because the principle remains the same. When you examine one pot, you know the entire clay world. You don't need to go and individually examine every object which is made from the clay. Or it remains the same. So this is one knowledge, knowing which the whole puzzle of creation is solved. That is, according to this definition, is called Vidya. The characteristics of Vidya are different from Avidya. It can be known fully, because the understanding of the clay itself is enough. It doesn't require understanding of the forms. Because forms are no real addition. If they were real addition, then you need to know the forms. But if they are no real addition, you don't need to know the details of the forms. So this is why this is called Vidya. It can be known fully, and it can be what it is, and then it will give you the understanding of not only one thing in the universe, the whole.
That is knowing Satya is a total Vidya.
Exactly. Knowing Satyam, you know the entire Mithya world. Exactly. If you miss Satyam, a Mithya world is unfathomable. Unfathomable. You can't know anything, so that means he's right. Avidya actually technically can mean knowing any given thing in Mithya world. It is within Avidya. Because you can't know it totally, and by knowing one, you don't know the other. And the knowledge of Satyam is what we call Vidya, because knowing which, the world of Mithya actually is wonderful. It's a good definition. Wonderful. So that means this is what it is. So Vidya and Avidya. So now, because you are pursuing Vidya, let's say you are pursuing the pursuit of what? This Satyam. But you can't say everybody is under what totally they are avidya. In avidya there are all highly exalted people, and many times you have to draw from the examples of physics, you have to draw from the examples of biology, neurosciences, quantum physics to demonstrate what? That Satya. So we constantly draw. It's not like, yeah, these people are like under the spell of avidya, so they are lesser being. Don't have that attitude.
Even otherwise also, that education gives you the process of inquiry and logic.
Exactly.
Which you have to use here.
Excellent. Both. You not only use what examples you need, right? And then that education gives you preparation, because logic is you need the inquiry, all that you need, and then you have to apply to it.
Using partial knowledge of
Usual partial, yeah, exactly. So that's why you can't look down upon it. So this exclusive spiritual club, my teacher was allergic to. He said, if you study this so-called spiritual world, most of it is, how many people have this rigorous knowledge, tell me? Most of the people are doing things which are so up in the air. He says, in the real world, what we call this avidya world, people are at least what? Rigorous about science, rigorous about math, rigorous about things. But these people who are in spirit, some flying with some spiritual idea, they start looking down upon these people.
Then again, the basic ideas are different from them, and you have still not understood.
Absolutely. So this is where we create what? Multiple layers. Multiple layers which doesn't make us see the reality. So that means that hey, everything is important. But what you have to understand is the ultimate vidya you can only call Brahma Vidya, without which the solution of you can't understand everything. So that is what it is. So now this is kind of easy to understand. What I did not understand is the last sentence of this verse, which says, actually, so that means what? You have to cross over from avidya to vidya, and you have a choice, right? Either you choose things of the mithya, which will not give you complete knowledge, but it will give you partial knowledge, or you choose Brahma Vidya, which will give you what? Complete knowledge. Then it makes the final sentence says, but this Atma, which is awareness, is free from what? Both Vidya and Avidya. Free from both. In which, what is a platform? That is where, so that itself, in that there is no Vidya or Avidya. Vidya and Avidya is for where? For the mind. Mind where there is ignorance. That ignorance, what is opposed to that ignorance? Knowledge. What is awareness? It sustains both what? Ignorance and knowledge. It is free from both. It is free from both. And this is what, actually this beautiful song that she sings from Adi Shankaracharya. It says, I am not I am also not moksha. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. Moksha is a pursuit for a jiva. From the standpoint of Satchidananda Atma, is Satchidananda Atma looking for solution? No, it's always free. For jiva there is a moksha, for Atma there is no moksha, it's already free. So that means the jiva is the one which is bound by ignorance. What sustains jiva? Atma. When jiva's ignorance is removed through what? The opposite of ignorance, which is knowledge. What sustains knowledge? Atma. In Atma, both ignorance and knowledge exist. Ignorance, the knowledge is opposite of ignorance, but Atma is free from both. That is the reality. Because if Atma was opposed to ignorance, please understand, postulate. If Atma was opposed to ignorance, your ignorance cannot survive. The very fact that till you know the knowledge, ignorance is very much there. What is sustaining that ignorance? Atma. What is sustaining that ignorance? It's part of this Maya, that is Maya, the other side of Maya Upadhi, and that is what manifestation of Ishvara, and Ishvara is the truth is Brahman. So that means Brahman is in which all the opposites exist. The light is opposed to darkness. That Brahman sustains what? Both light and darkness. It's not opposed to any. If you want to remove dark, you need to put light. But in Brahman, both possibilities exist. Itself is free from both. If you want to be a dharmic person, you have to give up adharma. But Brahman is the one which what makes both possibilities, because of which both possibilities exist. Itself is free from both. If you want to remove your ignorance, you need its opposite, vidya. But Brahman is free from both.
And moksha is not an event.
And moksha is not an event. Moksha is an event in some way,
Yes,
because you have removed ignorance in your buddhi.
Yeah.
So that means that Jiva has moksha, but Atma never has moksha. Because
No.
Atma is already free.
Na bandha na
The
moksha.
bandha na moksha. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. And the song that you sing is extraordinary.
I didn't write it.
No, I know. But then you probably first time I said, hey, Namo, this is like an amazing. You didn't even know what the song meant, and she learnt it very well. And that's the one song that she always sings. So something attracted you to this song.
No. It's Adi Shankaracharya.
Adi Shankaracharya. So that means that this Atma is because in which both possibilities exist and it is free from both. So
That's
that
why
is
we call it as a nirguna.
yes,
Others if you give some
exactly.
attribute.
Absolutely wonderful. That's why we call it nirguna. So if we give it a name, call it was ignorant, right? Then it is not knowledge. But if it is knowledge, it cannot be ignorance. So in order for it to be both, what? It has to be free from both. Nirguna. Correct logic. Correct. Exactly. So you can't give any attribute. Even the attribute of knowledge you can't give. In which knowledge which is opposed to ignorance exists, it is free from both. So this is how one understands. Now, here he says,
Chidananda is what?
this is same, Sat Chit Ananda. Chit and Ananda. They don't say Chidananda Rupa. Chit Ananda. So, Ekaika Jalam Bahudha Vikurva Tasmin Kshetre Samharati Esha Devaha Bhuya Sruštva Patayaha Ta Ishaha Sarvadhipatyam Kurute Mahatma. Okay, so now this is one thing. Here that whole Jalam. That Jalam we have all seen Indra's net. Indra's net is, there is a kind of an imagery which is used in what, Surya?
Atharva Veda.
Atharva Veda. And Atharva Veda uses what? This Indra's net. So what it says, what? From the Mount Meru. What?
Yeah, from the Mount Meru, which is where, which is the palace of Indra. So the king of all the gods. From there is a net which is spreading in all directions. An immense net spreading in all directions and all over the universe. And this net, in this net there are some
Jewels.
So there are threads, and at some intersection of some threads, there are some jewels. At the node of the thread, there are some jewels. So it's stress sheets all over, and it is not. Don't imagine a 2D net. Okay? Imagine a 3D net, and also dynamic in space and time.
So in fact, it includes space and time.
Space and time also. Yeah.
So now, what is in that representation?